Colonel Rob Maness has a lifelong record of providing dedicated service to this nation. Having worked his way up from the enlisted ranks to full colonel, he served our country for more than 32 years. He has served as a bomber squadron commander, bomb disposal technician, Joint Chiefs of Staff Operations Officer, assisted the National Security Team with the campaign plan for the global war on terrorism. He authored the first theater nuclear war plan and served as the Vice Commander of America's largest airborne intelligence wing. Colonel Rob Maness is a true American hero. This is Rob Maness Live.
President Donald Trump has won enough delegates to be the Republican presumptive nominee for president. He is set to go up in the general election against President Joe Biden, the presumptive Democratic nominee. Donald Trump has been the frontrunner since he announced his campaign in November 2022, but he started out as a bit of a weaker candidate. He was facing blame for his party's lackluster performance in the 2022 elections, and he was still facing some criticism, including from members of his own party, for his actions on January 6th. But since his challengers came into the primary, which were more than a dozen at one point, his challengers were weaker than expected, and Trump's legal problems have galvanized his supporters and pushed him forward to solidify the support of his party. While Donald Trump has won Republican primary contests by big margins, there are some warning signs for him ahead in the general election. The voters in the Republican primaries tend to be more conservative, and the voters in the general election are going to be a much more diverse group of people that Donald Trump is going to have to appeal to. He's also coming into this election with unprecedented legal challenges. He faces 4 criminal cases, more than 91 charges. He's been found liable separately by a jury for sexual abuse, and he's faced huge legal cases over his business dealings. All of those could really hurt him with voters in the general election. Donald Trump also has some strengths going into the general election. He was out early talking about the challenges at the border, which has become a bigger concern for voters of both parties heading into November. He also has been able to avoid some of the questions about age that Joe Biden is facing, even though he's only a few years younger than Joe Biden. Donald Trump also has a perception among some voters as being stronger on the economy, and his voters are still grappling with issues like inflation, high food prices. That could be something that plays to his advantage in November. Trump becoming the presumptive nominee for the 3rd time means that the challenges from any other Republicans hoping to end the era of Trump has mostly closed. Outside of some potential unlikely last-minute maneuvering at the Republican convention, Trump is set to be the party's nominee. This sets him up to use all the resources of the Republican Party, their state parties across the state, to help marshal his election in November.
And the real facts about stories in America today are hard to find. Welcome back to Truth Thursday here on the Rob Maness Show live on Patriot.tv and X Spaces simulcast. Well, the biggest news of the day really should be Donald J. Trump securing the Republican nomination for a historic 3rd time. But even though the government media, like that one right there, is forced to cover the story, like you saw with the AP's coverage there, they just can't bring themselves to give anything but superficial coverage to the big accomplishment, but they don't have a problem highlighting the false, manufactured negatives in that same coverage. Speaking of manufactured, the same judge who will rule on the Fani Willis ethics case, potentially throwing her and her team off the Georgia RICO case against Mr. Trump and his colleagues, dismissed 6 of the crazy DA's charges against them. Breaking news is also happening today in the Florida classified documents case against Mr. Trump. And finally, Elon Musk is calling out the gamer industry, and rightly so, as the biggest woke indoctrination effort of America's kids in existence, even topping that of our government schools' efforts to sexualize our kids. Well, talking about all of this with me today is David Pollack. David Pollack's a renowned lawyer, political commentator, and the chief operating officer of the DC Patriot, where he plays a pivotal role in steering the platform towards excellence in conservative journalism, and is the host of the David Pollack Show and co-host of DC After Dark. He brings a really unique blend of legal insight and political knowledge and acumen right to the forefront of everything he does. It engages audiences with his deep understanding of the complexities facing today's political landscape, and he's a key leader of the Veterans for Trump Florida team. I'll tell you that too, because I'm the leader of the Mississippi Veterans for Trump team. David, welcome to the Rob Maness Show for the first time. Hope it's the first of many.
Oh, thanks for having me. And that was quite the introduction. I don't know if it kind of was half eulogy, half like if I was going to give a graduation speech. So I kind of love it. We'll work on that. And maybe I add some, cabinet positions in there or something too.
Yeah, I would love to see you in a cabinet position. My goodness. I always tell people when they read my bio, my mom appreciates you reading that for you.
Exactly.
Because it's a little tedious from my perspective. Well, hey, man, you saw that clip there. That's a classic. It's classic. The government media. I don't even call them corporate media anymore. They are the government's media now. They had to cover that Trump he's won the nomination essentially, but they just couldn't. They can't help themselves. They can't say it's historic. They can't say it's phenomenal. They can't say it's unbelievable that this man could do this 3 times in a row so easily. They actually came out and said, and I want to get your thoughts on it, that he started out as a weaker candidate. Now, I was at the announcement in November of 2022 when he did that, and it sure didn't seem weak to me ever. He's never seemed like a weak candidate to me. And then they blamed his wins on the weaker than expected Republican candidates. I mean, you had the #1 Republican governor in the United States of America as a leading candidate against him, and he couldn't pull it off. And whether you like Ron DeSantis or not doesn't really matter. He still was the #1 governor, Republican governor in the United States. But the point is, these people and their minions, David, aren't they hurting the American people by not reporting honestly on the facts of each and every single story?
I think in 2016 that certainly was true. I think after Trump billed them the fake news, I don't think people expect them to cover it. I don't think people even hold them in any level of credibility or esteem. So I don't think people expect the fake news to cover the historic nature of what Donald Trump was able to accomplish. Now, he's not an incumbent. And I was planning on doing research on this. I don't know if it's ever happened before. Now, a non-incumbent nominee securing the nomination basically on Super Tuesday, that's usually when you start to kind of see who's rising to the top. But for a non-incumbent to secure the nomination this quickly, and by the way, by historic margins in each single primary. If you remember going back to Iowa, where Ron DeSantis said he was going to get his first win, and Nikki Haley, who celebrated coming in last or whatever it was there, he won double the votes than any other president who ever came even close. So he's having historic wins and weaker than expected competition. You had Nikki Haley there, Nikki Haley ran around the country saying that she was polling so high. How do you call how's the fake news considering her weak? Like you said, Ron DeSantis, America's governor, arguably the most popular challenger that Donald Trump was going to face. I don't even think he ever broke out of 10%. And so it wasn't weaker than expected competition, but that's the narrative they have to set. They have to set up this narrative because Donald Trump, and if you remember, they did this after 2016, an historic win in 2016. They didn't think he'd pull it off, but immediately pivot to Russia to kind of take away from the historic nature of his win. And they're doing it now. They're diluting his power, but they're only going to fool themselves like they did in 2016. They convinced themselves in 2016 that Hillary Clinton was going to be president. I mean, even going into that night, Hillary Clinton convinced herself she was going to be president. So they can keep lying to themselves and convincing themselves in their liberal echo chambers that Trump is a weak candidate, that he's not going to win, that Joe Biden's going to beat him, and he's going to go to jail for all of these fake charges against him, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But the reality is Donald Trump is surging to be the 47th president of the United States. And we said this from the very beginning, before this primary even started, that Donald Trump will be the next president of the United States. They know that. And that's why they put so much effort into trying to stop him.
Do you think that's why they're so afraid? I mean, every time you hear Rachel Maddow now, or one of the commies over on MSDNC talk these days, they seem to talk about how Donald Trump's going to end democracy, and he's going to use his Department of Justice to put his political enemies in prison or worse. When they aren't they looking in the mirror when they say that? and realize that their side is actually doing it these days. You know, Joe Biden and his DOJ are actually coordinating with the Georgia RICO state level prosecutor, you know, in Fulton County, or the county level prosecutor, Fannie Willis there. I mean, the evidence is direct that they are coordinating that effort. They're coordinating the efforts with Alvin Bragg in New York, Letitia James in New York, and Jack Smith in D.C. and now Florida in the documents case. Don't they think that everybody knows what's happening here when they say that kinds of stuff? That they're just trying to deflect the responsibility from themselves for the destruction of what we have known previously as the Republic of the United States of America, and trying to put it on some guy like Donald Trump, who's never been a politician before he was elected president in 2016. And I don't think that's ever happened, quite honestly. I don't know if Andrew Jackson was a political elected official or not, honestly, David. But George Washington, the first president, he was an elected official in the Virginia legislature before he became commander-in-chief of the Continental Army and eventually president of the United States. So not even he was a non-politician, quite honestly. So, I mean, this is incredible, the amount of effort that they're putting into not just destroying him, but destroying half of the country, because about half of the country, maybe even more now, supports this guy. It's probably 60% at this point, but we just don't know the true numbers because we can't get at them due to all the noise in the system.
You know, the true numbers are out there. I mean, you could walk around your community. I was in a space last night. Mark Carter was co-hosting. He was at Mar-a-Lago yesterday. That space should terrify Democrats and establishment Republicans, because here you saw the black community coming out and demanding accountability from politicians and talking about the fact that the Democrats haven't made good on their promises, and they're coming to the Republican Party expecting change, just like everybody who supports Trump. The proof is out there in your streets and in the communities and in the type of candidates that are behind Trump and that Trump's behind. There is a movement in this country to take accountability and hold all of our politicians, not just Democrats, Republicans, and that liberal hypocrisy that you talk about. That's like, you know, the best conspiracy theory ever, right? They want to go around and make it seem as if we're doing all the things that they're actually doing, whether it be Russia with Hillary Clinton in 2016, that literally colluding with foreign agents to invent a hoax to go after the president, but saying it had something to do with the president, to even their social movements. I mean, they'll literally be beating people on the head with a sign that says "Stop Hate" on it. I mean, there's no more apparent hypocrisy than that. And of course, Letitia James, when she was running for office, what did she say? I'm going to get Donald Trump. Elect me to get Donald Trump. Fannie Willis, same thing. I'm going to get Donald Trump. And what did Alvin Bragg? I'm going to get Donald Trump. And what did they do the second they were elected? They used the power of their positions to go after a leading political candidate. And they're talking about Donald Trump being a dictator. That is what dictators do. And the entire time, and look, you can say whether he doesn't know what's going on or whether he knows what's going on and he's going along with it, Joe Biden is overseeing all of this. His Justice Department going after Donald Trump with ridiculous charges. And I know we're going to talk about this a little later, but the 6 charges that were dismissed in Georgia. Now, this isn't the federal case. This is the state case. But I want to point out something. They were dismissed because they didn't even reach the threshold that they can prove, essentially. There wasn't enough even. It wasn't a probable cause hearing, but they said you can't prove this case, and so we're not going forward. They dismissed them. The case was so weak they didn't think they should go forward on it. Yet they tried to indict the president of the United States on a case that was so weak it couldn't even get past a dismissal. That is the amount they need to try to take down the president of the United States. Alvin Bragg's case is even weaker. This classified documents case from Mar-a-Lago, the motion to dismiss that they're hearing today, and I've been watching to see if anything gets released on that. But I mean, if you look at the arguments his defense team is making, he's entitled to hold those documents, first of all. Second of all, he can declassify them whenever he wants. And third, the fact that they're trying to say he willfully held on to them, which is every criminal case requires intent. He has a team of lawyers around him, a team of advisors, people doing things with these files. You would have to make it seem like Donald Trump himself is running through Mar-a-Lago with a box of files while his attorney's saying, no, you have to give them up, Mr. Trump. I'm taking these. That is the level of intent beyond a reasonable doubt that they're going to have to prove. And they're making it seem as if he was hiding these things to profit with China or Russia. The whole thing is ridiculous.
Ridiculous is the right word to leave it on. Well, we'll be right back after this break. And heads up, folks, Patriot.tv Live is having a launch party March 29th. General Mike Flynn's going to be the guest of honor. We'll be talking about the new movie Flynn, which will also be on tonight. I believe the cast will be on Shell Shocked with Cat the Hammer and Shell. And that's going to be fantastic. So March 29th, be watching here on the show for more information about the Patriot.tv Live launch party that we are going to have to just help get the word out about the new network that's really burning the wires up right now. We'll be right back with David Pollack on the Rob Maness Show.
Hi neighbor, Pat Boone here. Today, I want to help you find some peace of mind concerning your money. Like it or not, we're all living in a financial war zone. That's right. We're watching our hard-earned dollars get crushed by inflation. In fact, recently inflation reached its highest level in 40 years. And on top of that, cash, which has always represented freedom and privacy, is more and more being replaced by a cashless system. That's right. Powerful forces are definitely waging a war against cash. So I'm encouraging you to prepare before it's too late. Call or text the number on the screen for a free report, The Secret War on Cash from Swiss America. Discover how a few simple steps can protect your money as well as your privacy and your peace of mind. So call or text for your free report, The Secret War on Cash, and make sure to mention Pat Boone sent you.
My story started with alcohol, and I had tried going to other treatments, and all I did was think about how I was not going to drink or how I was going to drink one more day and then stop the next day. And Katie had found a treatment. I thought it was kind of hokey.
I could see a couple days into it, it's like the light bulb went on with him.
It's an IV infusion of all natural NAD. It saved my life and my family.
We've been where you sit.
The hardest part of this is making that phone call and just coming and talk to us.
WRAL is following breaking news at this hour. A judge in Georgia dismissed 6 of the election interference charges against former President Donald Trump and some of his co-defendants. However, he left most of the 41-count racketeering indictment intact. That judge threw out the solicitation of violation of oath by a public officer charge. Prosecutors say the defendants pressured members of the Georgia legislature to unlawfully appoint presidential electors. They also accused Trump and ex-White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows of asking the Secretary of State to, quote, find the votes so Trump could win Georgia. Now, this comes as the same judge is set to rule on ethics allegations against Fulton County District Attorney Fonnie Willis. Before, the judge said he would take at least 2 weeks to decide if Willis will be disqualified to handle that case. Trump and his remaining co-defendants accuse her of having a financially beneficial romantic relationship with Special Prosecutor Nathan Wade.
What polls show the majority of American voters did not want to happen.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show live on True Thursday at Patriot.tv and the X Spaces simulcast. And we're talking with David Pollack of the DC Patriot and the David Pollack Show and co-host of DC After Dark about just the media just can't get the facts right. And this story right here, David, about the 6 charges, have you noticed that they never want to say that the charges were so bad, according to the judge, and I'll just paraphrase him here instead of quoting him because it's pretty simple, that they could not meet even close to the standard of proving anything was against the law by the President of the United States petitioning another government to ensure that the election was fairly done. That's it in a nutshell. That's the charges that he threw out, is all based on those actions of President Trump and his team, which really are twofold, right? One is it's your First Amendment right to petition your governments, okay? And two, it's his duty as the President of the United States to ensure free, fair, and secure elections in every state, regardless, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's his duty to do what he did. And if you listen to that, I know the media liked to cut up that 2-hour tape or whatever when Trump called Fulton County, or I think it was when he called the supervisor of elections or whoever it was, I forget, Secretary of State. Yeah. That's what I'm thinking of. When he, in that 2-hour tape, you know, they cut out little clips. But if you listen to the whole 2 hours, what he was saying was, our team has evidence of such and such occurring. I'd like you to look into that for us. Can you please just look into this? I'm even willing to send my team down because they were like, Mr. President, we don't have the resources to do that. We're confident in our results. And he's like, well, I'll send people down. Can we do this? Can I send some people down from my team to take a look over things, to help you find things? Because we have things we could show you that suggest that something. It wasn't, I am the President of the United States, and if you don't change your outcome of this election, I'm coming down. The way they try to portray it, this RICO charges, which soon will be dismissed as well. This doesn't end here. And so let's just bring go to the 30,000 foot real quick. All of this was in the intent of all of this was to stop President Trump, to convince people not to support him in his reelection bid, was to dissuade him from running for reelection. All of this was to convince everybody that Donald Trump is damaged goods. Well, it didn't work. It backfired. They never thought they were going to convict him on any of these things. First of all, he can pardon himself on the federal crimes, which are weak in and of themselves. Second of all, on these state charges, they were all brought on novel legal theories that were untested and from people who have clear issues with their credibility. Fani Willis being one of them, she's about to be removed, having a personal relationship with the person she hired to investigate it and make her recommendations. You know, everything is so corrupt in this. And once it leaves these state courts and starts to get to some of these appellant levels, which will take years, all this stuff is going to be reversed. But none of this was ever intended to stop, to convict Trump. It was to stop Trump. And they're failing. But I will make a prediction. And this is why you guys need to pay close attention to the congressional races and the Senate races. It's very important. We have now, I think, a 1 or 2 seat majority in the House of Representatives, thanks to the expulsion of George Santos. And we have, so now that we have a weak majority in the House, we have to build on that majority, because here's what I know about some of these establishment Republicans that were behind Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis. They want to stop Trump too. And if he's even convicted on any of these, even if he's appealing them, I worry about an impeachment, because the Democrats, if they get control of the House, you know they're going to try to impeach him right away, immediately. And even if they aren't in control of the House, I worry that there's enough Republicans and they can get to go along with it. Then you get to the Senate. I mean, I don't want to go through this again. We have serious problems facing this country, and the efforts to stop Donald Trump because they're afraid of losing their swamp and their establishment is a threat to all Americans, which is why it's incumbent on all of us to go and make sure we're putting the right people in Washington, D.C. to support this president when he's reelected.
Yeah, and, you know, once the primaries are over for Congress in your state or your district, folks, you got to get behind that Republican, even if it's distasteful. Look, I had to endorse a guy named Bill Cassidy after I lost in my 2014 Senate race because it was that important to remove the Democrat that had been in that office for 18 years already and was voting left, and more left every time she voted. You know, so we've got to have more than a 1 or 2 seat majority in the House, and we've got to get the majority in the Senate back. So, folks, you really just got to put your shoulder to the wheel. And I'm going to have to do it here in my home state now in Mississippi. and get that Republican reelected or elected in that Senate race, in those House races, because that is what's got to be done. And you're right, David. We have to be very, very close attention on that. Let me make a correction real quick. Before the break, I said that Shell Shocked was going to have the Flynn team for the movie The Flynn on tonight. It's really next Thursday on the 21st. And then the launch party for Patriot.tv is on the 29th and 30th, where we'll also be having General Flynn as our guest in studio in Memphis, and a lot of other special guests doing live interviews, including yours truly here. So let's talk about Fani Willis, David. And just to remind everybody, I have a question for you, and you're sworn not to laugh. And that is, did she have the dress on backwards in that testimony or not?
I tried to figure that out. I know we actually wrote a story on it, the DC Patriot. The thought was maybe not. I was more actually distracted by how out of breath she was when she took the stand. I couldn't understand her explanation for it because she was pacing or something. That was the weirdest part. I mean, there was a lot of interesting moments. The dress being backwards, I'm not sure. If I had to guess, I would say probably not. I assume she knew how to put on the dress. But if she was in such a rush to get down there, maybe she did put it on backwards. Maybe she was, firming up her testimony with Mr. Wade and was in a rush. And so it could have been backwards. A lot of questions there. It's something we should investigate for sure.
Yeah, I have no idea, but I had to ask it because, human beings tend to focus on the strangest things sometimes. And what I was focused on was, and I'm not an attorney, but I've supervised attorneys in the Air Force, the JAGs, and I've worked with defense attorneys before, and I know they're officers of the court, and there's a certain amount of decorum that's required in a court of law, no matter what level you're at. And this person, who is a district attorney, is an officer of the court speaking to the judge and the attorneys for both sides, and really to the American people live. The way she was speaking was just atrocious is the only word I could think of. I mean, you're an attorney. I'm just shocked that she wasn't sanctioned by that judge more than once.
I mean, you got to look at that situation, and really what that is an illustration of the little respect she has for the law. I mean, everything she's doing in Georgia we all know it's politically motivated. So the way she handled herself in the courtroom shows how little respect she actually has for the rule of law. She's trying to weaponize the rule of law, not follow it. So I thought it was an appropriate way for somebody like that to behave. Remember that one point when she says, why are you asking me these questions? I'm not trying to steal the election. They are. If there was never a clear indication of bias, it was in that moment. I mean, forget all the other stuff that she did with taking campaign funds and using them to go on vacations with her wad of cash that she sleeps with as a pillow. Apparently, wherever she lays her head, it's a pillow filled with cash. Like there's the My Pillow filled with comfortable cotton, and you have the Fani Willis pillow that's filled with cash taken from her campaign.
Well, hey, we've got the live audience over there, and I know we got a hand up to ask you a question, and I shorted them on the first segment, so I got to go over there.
Sure.
Go ahead. I think Sofa King had his hand up. Go ahead, Sofa King.
Hi, David. Hi, hey, Colonel. Thanks for bringing me up. I wanted to get your take, David, on you mentioned before their novel legal theories. But isn't the Georgia case where they were going after attorneys, Trump's attorneys, for having novel legal theories?
Okay, so it's an interesting question. So when you're a lawyer, you're hired by somebody to represent them. So Trump hires lawyers based on his constitutional duty to make sure we had a fair and free election. He hires lawyers. The lawyers call, and again, if you listen to that 2-hour tape, it wasn't like a threatening, badgering type call. It was an inquiry, and he offered to send his lawyers. His lawyers were doing their job. And because they want to make it so that Trump's not even allowed to have lawyers, they're going after his lawyers as well. That's probably, even as offensive as it is to go after a former president of the United States, likely future president of the United States, to go after his lawyers for doing their job. They were acting in the scope of what they were asked to do. So, and when you talk about a novel legal theory, and I say it because of this, when you have something that hasn't been done before, right? And all these things inevitably end up in front of the Supreme Court because the law is made to be tested. And that's what lawyers are supposed to do. You're supposed to, the law is written by the legislatures and then they're tested in the courts to make sure that we're meeting constitutional muster. But the time to test legal theories isn't with somebody as high profile as the president of the United States. The perception there isn't, hey, this is something that we haven't applied before, but we should apply it here because of X. The perception is they're going to do whatever it takes to get Trump. And even taking legal theories that have never been used in such a context and put them in that capacity. And you've already seen 6 dismissals. The problem with this is, let's just pretend for a second, and I'm only going to pretend because I don't believe this to be true. Let's pretend for a second that some of the things that Trump is accused of doing, he did. And a serious investigation needed to be done, right? The perception of impropriety is the thing that judges use to make sure that everything they do, we don't call into question the integrity of a court. That's why a judge wears a robe, even though we know they're biased. They're appointed by Democrats or Republicans. Judges try their best, I think, to be objective. I think most do. But in the reality is we're always informed by our bias. But what you don't want to do is give the perception that the justice system is unfair or being misapplied. So if you remember the Hillary Clinton case, when they went in front of the cameras basically and were like, well, she did do these things, but we're not sure we can prove these, so we're not going to go and indict her. As angry as America should have been in that moment, because there was way more evidence against Hillary Clinton than there was against Donald Trump, it might have been the right call at a time, because think about what it would have done to the country to indict somebody without being sure you're going to convict. Because now you have distrust in your justice system. The justice system is the bedrock of our society. If we don't believe that we're getting a fair trial, that we don't have a society at that point. So if you're going to take a novel legal principle and go after the leading presumptive nominee of the Republican Party, you better be dang sure that you're going to get a conviction. And I don't think in any of these cases anybody could be like, yeah, we've convicted people on this before. Let me remind you, never in history has the president of the United States been charged with anything. And now they've given him 93 indictments. So we can't even pretend for a second that this is legitimate, or we should go and, and just be, haphazard about the way we charge things.
Oh, you're exactly right, David. In the next segment, right after this break, we're going to talk about the arbitrary enforcement that's going on in the classified documents case. That is the worst case, in my opinion, to bring against the president of the United States, president or former. And it's an entirely novel approach, and there's a Trump judge looking over it. So we've got the bias issue to address, too. We'll be right back on Rob Maness Live on Truth Thursday at Patriot.tv.
We've learned through the pandemic we can never be caught unprepared again. And so many Americans, when COVID hit, they had nothing in the house. Stores were shut down and doctors' offices were shut down. And even if doctors prescribed drugs, hydroxychloroquine, ivermectin, pharmacists wouldn't fill the prescriptions. That was a nightmare.
Now the situation is much worse. We have these horrible supply chain problems. In our emergency medical kit at the Wellness Company, we have 8 prescription drugs that are all potentially life-saving.
Most people who died with COVID, they died in the hospital because they didn't receive early treatment.
Every American family should have one of these.
I can tell you the Wellness Company kit is the answer.
The markets are getting crazy, and now is the time to protect yourself from economic turmoil. Silver is in the headlines right now and creating lots of excitement as the price of silver is extremely attractive compared to gold. A call to Swiss America gets you the scoop on whether the silver opportunity is for real. What you'll discover will really blow your mind. Today, silver faces a huge shortage due to the rising demand by military, solar, electric cars, and computers, all of which depend on silver. But right now, silver is priced to sell according to worldwide experts. Now, to help you get started, Swiss America is offering beautiful United States walking Liberty half dollars, issued by the U.S. Mint from 1916 to 1947 and minted in 90% pure silver for a special introductory price. Limit of $250 per customer while supplies last. So call the number on your screen or visit SwissAmerica.com, because now is the time to rediscover silver.
Is the day to bring you right now at 5:03 in just a few hours. Former President Donald Trump is expected in a Fort Pierce courtroom. Today's hearing centers on his classified documents case. I want to bring in our Brandon Nesbro, reporting live this morning just outside the federal courthouse.
Brianna, we know this could jam up traffic for a little bit. So when is the former president expected to arrive? Also, what can we anticipate happening behind closed doors?
Well, the GOP chair of St. Lucie County tells us the former president could arrive as early as 8:30 this morning. That means if your morning commute takes you north on I-95, be prepared for some rolling roadblocks. That's what happened the last time the former president was here just a few weeks ago. Now, this could be a crucial day as it could determine whether Trump's trial will still begin on May 20th. But as we've seen, the judge has postponed multiple dates in this case already. Now, just yesterday, federal prosecutors requested a July 8th trial date. But defense lawyers argued there was no way of holding a fair trial this year when Trump is looking to clinch the Republican presidential nomination. Instead, they proposed August 12th. Trump faces.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show, and we're talking with David Pollack of the David Pollack Show and the DC Patriot about the truth in media reporting and facts and honesty and those kinds of things. And David, this is the classified docs case. That report was from this morning. The president is present in the courtroom. And we saw some reporting just before I came on the show from Julie Kelly, who's in the courtroom, saying that Judge Cannon, who is a Trump appointee, let's be honest about that, is asking both sides about the question of when the crime started. And the answer is in the indictment, January 20th, which happens to be a day that the president was still the president of the United States on these charges of unauthorized taking of classified information. And this case really revolves around two laws, but the main one is the Espionage Act from the early 1900s, but the other one's the Presidential Records Act. But what it's not revolving around is the truth. And the truth is there's one office in the United States of America that is elected by every state and all the people and has 100% all control over what is classified and what is unclassified or declassified, no matter what anybody says, and doesn't have to follow some arbitrary bureaucratic set of rules like I did when I held a top secret sensitive compartmented information security clearance. I had to follow all the arbitrary bureaucratic rules because I didn't have the power inherent in my position to declassify something or classify something other than by those bureaucratic rules. The president of the United States does not. And that's the issue for me. And when you look at, you contrast it with what's happening with Joe Biden's case, where he was like me as vice president. He had no ultimate power and authority to declassify or classify or to take classified records out of his government position, whereas the president of the United States does, especially under the Presidential Records Act. I'm totally confused as to why they would even bring this case, other than they want to stop him from getting elected president. But from a legal perspective, man, this is nuttier than any other case, in my opinion.
I mean, and that's just the large issues in this case. We haven't even talked about the smaller issues like chain of custody, on the evidence that they're going to have to rely on. I mean, there are so many evidentiary issues that we haven't even had a chance to discuss, because we have the significant issue of whether or not the president can even be charged with, because of the immunity he would have while he was president. But more than that, remember, this is a criminal case. This isn't like these garbage civil cases out of New York. This is a criminal case. You have to prove intent beyond a reasonable doubt. You have to prove the mens rea. You have to prove that he had a criminal mindset, that he set out to do these things intentionally. Like, and we're talking about the Espionage Act. We're talking about the Records Act. And these were done in the wake of trying to prevent things like Nixon trying to actually destroy documents, right? Trump wasn't trying to destroy things. He wasn't hiding them to keep people from he thought he had the right. He was advised that he had the right to retain these documents. So he did. He was advised he had the right to retain those documents. And they're trying to say that when he was asked to return them and he didn't, that was the willful conduct when he was essentially saying, I don't have to. But you know what? He had the right to question whether or not he had to give them back because his lawyer said, no, Mr. Trump, you don't have to turn those over. That is not criminal activity. It's not criminal intent. You're never going to convince a jury beyond a reasonable doubt that the president was holding on to these documents so he can harm the United States with them. Of course, that's what they're going to try to say. They're trying to say that with January 6th, that he was inciting an insurrection. All these, they're trying to make it seem as if Donald Trump is an enemy of the United States when the actual enemy of the United States are the people that are charging him.
Oh, you're absolutely right. That not only the people that are charging them, but those that are in the intelligence community across the board. I don't know if you saw the breaking news from last night and this morning, but the CIA was actually operationally involved on January 6th inside the United States. Now, there's a clear law that the CIA doesn't do operations within the United States of America or against the American people. That is clearly in the law. In this case, it's clearly the enemies of the country are the people that are charging him and continuing this fiasco into this hotly contested election year, David. It's absolutely crazy and it's dangerous. I keep coming back to that as somebody who has, served to defend the country, risked my life for it, lost friends serving this country and going after America's enemies. And it's dangerous for the country. It's dangerous for the American people. It is dangerous for this government to be able to continue. Why can't we find judges and elected Congress people that will take the funds and handcuff these people to prevent them from doing us more harm? It's not about Donald Trump anymore, is it?
Well, that's the $1 million question. And, it's not just the abuse of the Justice Department. Our border's wide open. I think that the reason why I can tweet about being angry at Republicans, and it does better than tweets about being angry with Biden or Democrats, because I think most Republicans right now are frustrated that even though we have a 2-seat majority, we still have the majority. And under our watch, this is still going on. And, Speaker Johnson has argued, well, we have a very narrow majority. We need to keep our powder dry essentially for November when we take back the White House. We only control 1/2 of 1/3. Excuse. But if the Democrats had even 1-seat majority in the House of Representatives, they would be able to effectuate their will like they did when they had very narrow majorities when Trump was president. Republicans need to band together because the country is at risk. I mean, when you have bureaucrats running around the country doing whatever they want to do, taking people's lives away, putting people in jail. And now there's somebody about to serve a prison sentence now that was in Trump's inner circle. And so there are still people going to jail, still people being charged, not to mention the people still sitting in prison from January 6th. We got to get control of this before people lose all faith in the justice system. Now, I will say this. The fact that this judge in Fort Pierce is Trump appointed, the fact that some of these judges are not Trump appointed, I will say that historically, judges tend to disappoint the parties that appoint them. The 9-0 from the Colorado case is a perfect example of that. So I wouldn't put too much confidence or fear in who appointed the judge. The law is a tough thing sometimes, and sometimes people have more loyalty to the law than their political party.
Yeah, I mean, Julie Kelly made a prediction out of her witnessing of the questioning this morning and said that this judge probably won't dismiss based on these arguments. But there's another argument, and that is about equal application of the law, which is why she was asking so many questions about it, even though motions this morning were about the Records Act and the Espionage Act, and that a president had never been charged ever in history for these kind of things, and that they hadn't met the criminal intent and those kind of things for it. So yeah, I think the big question on this one is because of what they have ignored with Joe Biden, who had no power and was just like me, as a security clearance holder and should be held to that same standard versus the president of the United States, who has all the power until the moment that they leave the office, which means all those records were packed up when he was president of the United States and transported when he was still president of the United States, because he was airborne by the time noon rolled around, if I remember correctly. So big differences there, and I think that's going to be the one that eventually should be decided on. But we'll see. She may not do it because she is a Trump appointee, and everybody's a human, and she may be hesitant to do that. So we'll see what happens. But I just wanted to report that she is a Trump appointee because I don't want to ever be accused of not putting the truth out for sure. Well, we'll be right back after this message, David. And I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about culture in our society, the wokeism going on. And Elon Musk is calling some people out this morning about the wokeism indoctrination of our kids. We'll be right back on the Rob Maness Show. It's Truth Thursday with David Pollack.
Experts say that Russian hackers found a way to hack our utilities, and the hackers may still be in there, waiting to strike.
Go after their power, go after their water, and you can bring a nation to its knees.
They're identifying targets, they're positioning malware so they could pull the trigger when they wanted to.
Experts see the intrusion as a possible precursor to an unprecedented Russian cyber attack that could, in the event of war, devastate the U.S.
We know that China has been hacking everything they can and stealing our intellectual property. They want to take down America's economy. They want to take down our morale. They understand that if they can destroy our economy, they can destroy our future. We're at war.
Joining me at the news desk now is Rebecca Walzer of WalzerWealth.com. She has been a regular guest on my TV show, Brennan House Live, for a long time. She's not just an economics expert, but she's an attorney. Rebecca, you have a large firm. How many people work for your firm?
Just about 30, yes.
30. And
yes.
Tell me, how can people prepare for what's coming with the end of the dollar as we know it?
The end of the fiat system as we know it globally. We are moving to hard asset-backed currencies again. Thank the Lord, because fiat is where we get into all the problems. When you have debt-based currency, you have debt-based problems. And the United States, unfortunately, since 2020 has not stopped spending at pandemic levels. This is systemic and it is unsustainable, and it is coming to an end, especially with the addition of Saudi Arabia and the UAE to the BRICS nations. This is what controls our petrodollar. This is the threat immediately in 2024.
For more information, WalzerWealth.com. WalzerWealth.com. She is not your traditional financial planner. Find out why at WalzerWealth.com.
The 1990s might be hard to believe. By revenue, the gaming industry is bigger than both the movie industry and the music industry combined. And for the past several years, it hasn't been especially close. The difference is consistently more than $100 billion per year. So video games are a massive market, one that's mostly targeted at young people, of course. But despite those numbers, for the most part, the games industry has avoided mainstream scrutiny. You'll see far more discussion about, say, Sydney Sweeney or Taylor Swift than you'll ever see about prominent video game voice actors and directors who pretty much no one knows anything about. Everyone's heard of Lionsgate or Paramount, but almost no one's heard of studios like Don't Nod Entertainment, for example. And that's significant because these no-name studios are behind the single most coordinated effort to indoctrinate millions of children through entertainment that's ever occurred in this country. This effort is maybe more powerful than the teachers' unions, if only because these propagandists mostly work in secret. Even if you homeschool your children, they're not immune to it. You might have heard something about one of the companies behind this indoctrination effort called Sweet Baby Inc., or SBI. And in a moment, I'll get into the details about what exactly that organization is doing and who's helping them do it. But first, I want to get the good news out of the way, which is that if there's any silver lining, it's that this effort to indoctrinate children is incredibly ham-fisted. Some of the dumbest people in the world are behind it. So take that studio I just mentioned, Don't Nod Entertainment. They're behind the very popular Life is Strange video game series, which has been played by tens of millions of people. And to give you an idea of how overt the propaganda is in Life is Strange. Here's just one mercifully short sequence involving, what else? A racist white guy. There's some backstory about how he kidnapped an innocent Hispanic kid or something. And then this, watch.
Gonna tell the police you kidnapped me. Nice try. But I know who you are and what you did in Seattle. I saw it in the paper. Maybe I should call ICE to make sure you're a citizen. You hillbilly. I'm American. Watch it, punk. Whatever. You're going to jail for this. Pretty sure the local police will vouch for me over a thug like you. Where's my brother? Wish I knew. Little took off. I'll find him. Don't worry. If you touch him... You think I'd hurt a little boy? Guess you didn't have any second thoughts about leading him out into the middle of nowhere, though. That's real safe for a little kid. If he's lucky, he won't end up like his criminal big brother. Just let me go. Please. You're the reason we need to build that wall. You hold tight.
I guess I...
There it is. You know, us white supremacists that want to control our border because we're a country. We're the bad guys in the gamers worldview on that particular video. And, you know, and Elon Musk just this morning tweeted out that the gamer industry is responsible for the worst woke indoctrination of American kids ever in history. And nobody even knows about it, really, unless you're a parent and you're watching that stuff that those kids are playing on like I do. Well, we're talking with David Pollack today of the DC Patriot and the David Pollack Show and co-host of the DC After Dark Show. David, that is something that it's been a long time coming. You know, those of us that have kids, I still have a teenager. He's 19 and he's been playing these video games and I watch him with him, play the games with him to see what's involved and try to filter that stuff out. But man, it's just loaded with information, regardless of that. And I personally have never seen that clip that Matt Walsh has played on his show. But man, that's some pretty dark stuff, and it's constant feed into the kids' heads. They don't even realize it, do they?
No, and that's why I think it's important for parents to explain to kids before they're even if they're not playing video games, about what's fake, what's real, how narratives are inserted into things. Because, yeah, we are battling for our kids' minds every day. I have conversations with my own kids, even about things on TikTok. I'm like, these things aren't real, right? These people, the way they look isn't real. The things they say aren't real. And it was funny because one of my kids said the other day, she said, I have to have this app because I have to know these things, because if I don't know these things, people are like, why don't you know these things? You should know them. And then I stopped for a second and said, think about that. Why is society telling you that you must know the same things that everybody else knows and have the same opinions as everybody else? What they've done so well, and when I say they, I mean the people who control the way people think, and they are going after our kids. They're the most impressionable. And they're trying to program people to believe the same set of ideas, because once you can get people to believe whatever, and that's at the heart of what in the trans controversies and everything, it's to get people to believe whatever you tell them, and then getting society to reinforce those beliefs. And yes, that video game's a perfect example to make it seem as if, they're white supremacists that are racists against people. And you see it in television shows and video games. They're trying to reinforce a narrative through entertainment, and it is worse now than it's ever been. And it's probably a bigger obligation on parents to really police what their kids are doing, but you can't. You can't be everywhere your kids are. They're going to be in school. Their friends are going to show them stuff. So it's really important to actually have the conversation so that you're raising kids that are able to decipher what's brainwashing and what's real. And I think that's the real challenge that parents face.
Yeah, I mean, my grandsons were down here this past week. They're teenagers, and they're actually close in age with my youngest son. So they all game together virtually all the time. And I've started watching the Halo TV series a few months ago, and I discovered it on one of the apps and everything. And I was telling them about it because I asked them, "Do you guys watch that?" They go, "Oh no, it's not good. It's not good enough for the game." The Master Chief that's in Halo would never do this or that or whatever, and the Spartans are totally different and all that. So, and then I told him, I said, do you know that in the TV show they have a lesbian relationship between two of the Spartans that they've written into the show? I don't remember ever seeing that in the game when I was, watching it with you guys. And they go, absolutely not. You're kidding me, right? So, it's a both sides thing, both sides of the deal. You got to pay attention to, and you got to have conversations with people and your kids and your friends too, because your friends that have kids are going to know things differently than what you know. It's just amazing that parents just kind of put everybody on autopilot, it seems like these days. And we need to encourage those parents to be actively involved in their kids' lives and everything they do, not just going to baseball games or sports or whatever, but especially the gaming, because they're spending more time on those phones and on these games than on anything they do outside of it. Quite frankly, most of the kids are, unless you've got very tight control on their devices, they're able to get to a game on any device these days, televisions, phones, laptops, iPads, tablets, and those kind of things that can play all the same games on any of those devices. So you have to really, really be focused in on that and talk to them to find out what's really going on. I had no idea there was a difference between the TV show of Halo and the game itself until the kids told me when I asked them about it. It's really strange. You mentioned that there is just different things like the border issue, and that clip had it in it, and they painted a MAGA type person as a white supremacist and those kind of things. That issue is all under the basis of a theory called critical theory. You've heard it as critical race theory, critical queer theory, gender theory. They're all under the same Marxist concept of critical theory. And it's being used in all those various identity ways as a cultural Marxism indoctrination of not just our kids, but also our military officers and our military civilians. Before the show was breaking, and I didn't have a time to get a clip on this, David, but I wanted to get your take on it. James O'Keefe broke a video late yesterday about the associate director at the Pentagon of Total Force Requirements and Sourcing Policy, which is, the person that's the assistant director over the part of the Pentagon that's working on recruiting, equipment design and acquisition, and those kinds of things for the total force, which means reserve, National Guard, active duty forces, and everything. And this guy in this video says we should open all our borders, tear down the wall, repeal the Second Amendment. The government should be the only one with guns, and it should be the Department of Defense that's the only one with guns in this country, amongst other things, and that we should pack the Supreme Court so they can never turn it off, overturn those policies. This is a high-ranking official in the Office of the Secretary of Defense that writes the Secretary's answers to questions from Congress and reporters and those kinds of things. That is critical theory indoctrination at the point of success, is it?
Yeah. Well, yeah, and to go back just briefly, you look at where we are, and this kind of all ties together. When COVID happened, they locked everybody in their houses. The kids weren't allowed to go to school. Parents were home and trying to figure out what to do with the kids. The reliance on video games really became apparent then. And now we're in an economy where everybody's working now and have to be out of the house, and the kids are on these video games, which were babysitting them during COVID. And it's almost like it was an intentional design to force kids into these video games to be indoctrinated, like you see. But going forward on what you're talking about with what James O'Keefe is breaking, this is the mentality of Joe Biden's cabinet. I posted about this other day on X. It's not just Joe Biden that's incompetent. It's his entire cabinet. And if you look what's happening, whether it be overseas or whether it be domestically at the FAA with Buttigieg, I don't know what he's doing anymore. There's been train explosions. There's been plane accidents that never should have occurred. Boeing is getting away with whatever they want, apparently, hiding things from our DOJ. The cabinet itself is also destroying this country. And you just articulated it well. I mean, this is the mindset of the people that are charged with protecting our borders. And they think, well, let's just keep them open. I mean, this is, we need November to come as soon as possible because America's enemies are literally running her into the ground.
You're absolutely right. Well, David, we're out of time. Where can folks find you real quick on social media before I let you go?
Yeah, sure. Follow me on X at The Pollock Show, Pollack Show, at The Pollock Show on X. You can also check out www.dcpatriot.com, where you can find our shows and our content and our articles. And, everywhere else you'll find me through the website. So Twitter, DC Patriot, and of course, check out our show, DC After Dark and the Dave Pollock Show.
Well, thank you, man. I appreciate you coming on today. It's been a great show. And Monday, on More War Mondays, we're moving the discussion about the war and invasion of America's southern border to More War Mondays. We'll be talking with Ali Legge of Veterans for Trump Florida about the new border invasion movie because I really want to dive into the details in that movie and talk about the issues of this war that's being perpetrated on the American people by the Department of Homeland Security and the Department of Defense and this President of the United States. I'm Rob Maness at Patriot.tv. We'll see you next week.